Hey friends, it's Laree from the blog wagonwheelhomestead.com. Welcome back. Today I'm in the garden doing some more early spring work, and I want to show you what I'm doing. Today we are going to prune raspberries, both fall raspberries and summer raspberries, and I will talk to you about the difference in those. We're going to talk about pruning blueberries, pruning elderberries, and we're also going to prune back and kind of clean up some of the asparagus beds. So the first thing I want to do is take you for just a really quick tour of my garden area and show you a little bit of what my orchard looks like, and then we're going to get right to it. So come along. All right, so this is our garden area. We have it surrounded by a really nice deer fence that my husband built. And the actual garden area is about 70 by 130. It was supposed to be a 70 by 100 because we were supposed to put a chicken house on the other end of it, and we may do that still. But until the chicken house is there, I went ahead and extended the garden because I couldn't stand to see the land go to waste. So right over here on this side is the blueberries. In the middle is where we plant all of our vegetables. And we grow in 30-inch wide beds. And we use landscape fabric to help with weed pressure. I will explain more about that in a garden planning video that I will link here. So anyway, let me take you over here. This is the asparagus patch. This is right along our shop. Anytime you are looking at where to put a garden, if you can put it on either a south-facing slope, a slight slope, or up next to a building, it will offer quite a bit of protection from your prevailing winds, which for us is northwest winds, our prevailing winds. So all along here, next to this fabric, is asparagus. So what we're gonna do is prune some of that back. This is some of my drip line I use to water the garden. It's just all sitting here waiting to be put on the garden. As I mentioned, we're in the middle of spring cleanup, so gardening isn't the most beautiful thing this time of year, but it's all about what makes it happen later in the year. So this is 2 beds of garlic. It goes all the way 130 feet to the other end. There is 3 rows per bed, and it's already coming up nicely. I had it covered with hay, and it just recently uncovered it. So you can see the garlic is coming up really good. Garlic is actually really easy to grow. This is all strawberries. So from here all the way down there is all strawberries. I just got done cleaning that spot out, and we're excited for a big bountiful harvest this year. This is some solar panels we had that used to operate our well before we lived here. We started homesteading on this property 8 years ago, and we needed some solar panels to operate the well because there was nothing here when we started. It was completely bare ground. So we have fixed most of the fences, built this shop. We've built a house, a barn. We're working on corrals and all the things. So this is just a little stand my husband put out here. I can wash vegetables, all the things. Back here, it's not coming up yet, but I have some rhubarb plants and some comfrey. And we still don't have the garden gates across the garden, so panels work for now. Homesteading is a process. Nothing's ever quite done. So anyway, this is the fall raspberries that I'm going to be talking to you about. And then down here is the summer bearing raspberries. These bear mainly in June and part of July. So we're going to prune those. This is again where we plant more of the vegetables. And then right across there you can see where the blueberries are. Down here is the orchard, and again the original plan was to put a chicken house / greenhouse in between the garden and the orchard. We may still do that, but for right now I'm just using it for garden space. So we have elderberries, apple trees, peach trees, pear trees, cherry trees, apricot trees, a plum tree, and then we have grapes that grow down each side of the orchard, and then on the very other end we have a row of blackberries. So that is the quick tour of the orchard and the garden, and we're going to just start right here with these summer bearing raspberries. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about them, and we're going to get them pruned, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So when you're pruning raspberries, it's helpful to have a pair of gloves of some kind. These are leather gloves. And summer raspberries produce on what they call the second year cane. So what happens is when you plant these raspberries, they come bare root from a nursery usually, or sometimes they're potted, but I ordered mine, got them from a nursery, and I planted them. They're just little canes, small 1-foot canes, and I planted them 1 foot apart all the way down through here. And what they do is they grow up from the root with several different canes, and they fill out, and you don't want to let the row get wider than about 2 feet, or else they will spread. They're very easy to grow. It's almost impossible to kill raspberries. But what they do is they grow up their first year, and then on the second year, those canes produce fruit. So if you plant raspberries this year, you won't see fruit on them until the following year, or not much fruit, if any. So what we need to do is take out all of the 2-year-old canes, the old wood. I'm going to cut some here and show you what it looks like. And we're going to leave all of the new wood, the chocolate brown new wood, so that we will have nice fruit this year. One thing that we need to finish in our garden is putting up a trellis. We have part of it done for our raspberries, but ideally you would have a wire about 4 foot off the ground on each side, and you would be able then to pull the chocolate brown new shoots that are going to fruit this year towards the outside, and you can tie them to the wire just so that it's easier to pick the fruit, and then you can let the new shoots for next year kind of grow up in the middle. I haven't gotten that done yet, and it's not a big deal. We have probably 25 gallons of raspberries in our freezer right now that I need to get made into jam and syrup and all the things, which I will show you how to do. But these produced well. Every year they produce well, and they especially did last year with all the extra rain that we had. So if you don't get a trellis set up for raspberries right away, it's not the end of the world. Raspberries like a lot of water. They're very easy to grow, as I mentioned. The only pest that you really have to worry about is a small fruit fly called spotted wing Drosophila. It's a little tiny fly that lays its eggs in the fruit, and when they hatch, they're just a little tiny larva looking thing. They really won't hurt you. You can spray for them, but I try to be as organic as possible, so I do not spray for them. You can also set traps for them. I have found that they do not lay their eggs, and they are not active under 90 degrees. So what I have chosen to do is not sell this fruit at market, because I don't want to sell fruit that has fruit fly larvae in it. But I just choose to use this for my family, and if there's a couple little fruit flies in it, it doesn't seem to bother us at all, just for home use. So otherwise, there's really no pests, not much disease to worry about. It is a good idea to keep them pruned. It just keeps them less messy and reduces any chance for disease. So with that, let's get right on it. All right, so I'm gonna start cutting out all the old dead wood. This, you can tell, is dead because the bark is peeling and it's grayish on the outside. It's quite clearly dead, and when you cut into it, it's brown. Okay, so I'm just gonna cut all of that out, and I will show you some up-close shots also of the chocolate brown wood. It'll be easier to see once I'm done cutting out some of this nastiness. I'm also gonna just take this opportunity to clear any weeds or brush that may have grown up. Raspberries aren't bothered much by weed pressure. It's good to keep them weeded in the spring, but as the summer goes on and I get busy with the rest of the garden, I don't do much with the raspberries, and they seem to survive just fine. You can sometimes just break them off. It's better to cut them, but sometimes they're so brittle that you go to grab them and go in there to cut them and they just break off, and that's fine. You can cut them off as close to the ground as possible. We don't need them anymore. can also cut back any small, short wood that you're not going to want to bend clear down and pick. These aren't going to produce as good a fruit if they're really short anyway. So I usually try to leave the bigger canes that are at least the size of my finger. This is an example of a chocolate brown new cane. This is the ones that we want to leave for this year unless they're really short. It helps to have a kneeling pad because oftentimes there's sandburrs and all kinds of things that aren't fun to kneel in. It's also a good idea to wear some kind of sunglasses or protective eyewear because you can get poked in the eye. That's how you prune summer raspberries. This particular variety is very winter hardy. We are in north central Nebraska in a zone 4B, and these have been through some really hard winters in the 8 years that they have been here, and they've produced every single year without fail. So Killarney is a really good variety for summer bearing. I like it because it produces in the spring in June. And our idea behind planting some of the fruit here was that we wanted some fresh eating all summer long. So we start with rhubarb and asparagus and then move on to strawberries. And as soon as the strawberries finish, the raspberries come on, and then there's blueberries, and then lots of fruit from the orchard, along with all the fresh vegetables, of course. So I really like that these produce through June and part of July. And then I'm going to take you down here and show you the autumn raspberries and show you how they are different. Okay, these are my fall bearing raspberries. This particular variety is called Autumn Britain. I got it from Jung Seed Company. It's been here for 8 years and it's honestly a favorite variety of mine. The difference with fall bearing, or they sometimes call them ever bearing raspberries, is what you do when you prune them is you want to prune everything all the way back to the ground. They really do not produce on second year canes. So we're going to prune everything down to within 3 or 4 inches of the ground. You do not have to cut it off flush, but you could. It probably wouldn't hurt it. I just cut them off 3 or 4 inches above the ground, and they will grow up really nice stalks this summer, and by fall they will be ready to produce fruit. If I were to leave these, if I were to not prune these back, they would have a small harvest in the spring and a small harvest in the fall, which is why they are sometimes called ever-bearing. But because I have my summer-bearing raspberries, I prefer to just have my summer ones in the summer and these in the fall. So it's very simple. I'm just going to cut them all the way back to within 3 or 4 inches of the ground, and these will be pruned. So once I get these done, I will show you a picture of how it looks when it's all pruned. I also have 3 or 4 plants right in the middle of yellow fall bearing raspberries, and I prune those the same as I do these fall bearing raspberries. So I prune them all the way down to within 3 or 4 inches of the soil. All right, let's keep going. I'm going to show you how to prune blueberries and elderberries, and we're going to look at the asparagus. So a couple things on blueberries. I do not consider myself an expert on growing blueberries like I do some other things. We all are always learning, aren't we? But I will share with you what I know. They like an acidic soil. So oftentimes after doing your soil test, you will have to amend your soil for the blueberries to be acidic. And you can do that by putting sulfur on the soil. I did that when we first planted these, and we amended the soil appropriately. But then we weren't living here yet. It was before we had our house built, and so it took a couple of years before we were up here. And during that time, the rabbits ate some of them off during the winter. So they kind of had a rough start. We have 20 blueberries that go down this side of the garden. These are some of the original ones. They still aren't super big, but man, the fruit that comes off of them is so good. So I am encouraged by that, and I'm determined to keep going. And I think eventually my soil will be right and these will really take off. Part of the issue with it is I have 5 kids and I'm very busy, and so they really haven't gotten the tender loving care that blueberries probably need. So it's not really their fault, it's probably mine. But I'm still determined to figure it out and make them work. So I've got some smaller plants that I put in last year that are just getting started. But these original plants are big enough to be pruned. So what I'm gonna do is prune back anything that is crossing each other, similar to what you would do in a fruit tree. Anything that looks like it has really small wood. And just kind of try to clean it up. You really don't want any wood in here older than 6 years old, and I can see that some of this wood is really old and really not producing anything anymore. So this branch I'm taking out. This will allow more nutrients to go to the good wood that's still left. So typically blueberry bushes are bigger than this, and hopefully these will be that way someday. So we had well over 25 gallons of grape juice concentrate that we put up off of our grapes last year, and I will link a video showing how to prune grapes. My pruners are honestly getting a little bit dull just because they have spent so much time pruning this year already. It's early March for us. This is unseasonably warm weather. It's 70 today, but it's supposed to snow and rain tomorrow. So spring is not completely here yet. But anytime I can get out in the garden on a nice day, I do, because when it comes time to plant all the warm season crops, there is not time to do all of this other pruning. I am going to take this one is basically crossing each other, but these little tiny shoots right here, I'm going to cut these off and I'm going to stick them in a pot and I'm going to root them, and you can do your own blueberry cuttings that way. I'm going to take off these tiny little buds on the end that are fruiting buds and only keep the leaf buds, which you will see. That looks better. Now let's move on to the elderberries. All right, here is my elderberries, and because it's so unseasonably warm, they're actually starting to bud out just a little bit. Anyway, the best time to take hardwood cuttings, which is the easiest way to propagate elderberries, is in February or March. So it's high time that I get these cuttings done if I want to. I'm first going to look and see if there's anything towards the bottom that needs cut back. And I do see a small branch. It's actually dead. I'm going to cut that off, and I'm going to cut off any weak wood. And that one's actually dead also. Trim this one back, and then I'm going to trim him back just a little bit. And I'm going to use him for a cutting. So I'm going to stick him in a pot, and he will grow, and then I can have more elderberries. Elderberries are so easy to grow, and you can make really good elderberry syrup, which is an extremely good immune booster. You can also use it on pancakes, so it's actually yummy at the same time. So the smaller the cuttings, the better, the shorter for elderberries. I have 2 cultivars of elderberries, Adams and Johns. And I guess I should have mentioned on the blueberries, I have blue crop elderberries, and what's the other one? Something else blue. Anyways, I'll try to put a link to it. Blue crop and something else. Anyway, they are fairly winter hardy. I just think that they've had a hard time keeping up with the rabbits before we lived here, so just pruning back anything that looks weak or dead, and that will help to ensure a really good crop this coming year. When you harvest elderberries, the best thing to do is just pick them and stick them in a Ziploc bag. Just pick the whole bunch, not the individual berries, the whole bunch. Stick it in a Ziploc bag and put it in your freezer. And then in the winter, when you have time, you can take them out and just frozen, shake the clump, and all the little berries will fall off, because elderberries are extremely small. And so you don't want to take all day picking them off individually. All right, that looks good for that elderberry. I will do my other elderberry plants, and we'll move on to the asparagus. Asparagus really don't need pruned back, but they do just need cut, the old branches cut out. I wouldn't necessarily call it pruning, but I'm just cleaning out all the old weeds and plant matter from last year. This is Mary Washington asparagus. This is a 70-foot long row. When you plant asparagus, what you want to do is dig a ditch about 6 inches wide and 12 inches deep. And then you want to lay your asparagus crowns. This is if you plant crowns, which is what I did. You lay your asparagus crowns down in the bottom of the trench, and you they have a lot of tendrils or little legs on them, and you want to spread those out in a circle. You lay them down, and then you cover it up with compost or a lighter soil. I made the mistake the first time I planted this of covering it up with our native soil, which has a lot of clay in it. It's very heavy soil, and most of the asparagus crowns rotted in the ground and never came back, which is really a bummer, because when you plant asparagus, you cannot harvest off of it until the 3rd year. So this is an original asparagus. There was a couple of them that survived that heavy soil. So I can harvest off of these, but I can't harvest off of this whole row for 2 more years because I just got it replanted last year. So anyway, cover it up with light soil, and it's best if you only cover it up a couple inches at a time. So cover it up a couple inches, then let it grow a couple more inches through the soil, and cover it up a couple more inches. You get the idea. So after 3 years, you can harvest off of it for 1 week, and then you let it go after that, because you want it to put as much energy back into the plant as possible. A good stand of asparagus will come back for many, many years, so it's really worth it. It's definitely a perennial plant that you want to have in your garden. It's one of the first vegetables that you can harvest in the spring. It's so nice to have fresh produce after a winter of eating out of your pantry. So definitely invest in asparagus. Put a row of it in, but just know that you're not going to be able to harvest off of it for 3 years. The 4th and 5th year, in other words, the 2nd and 3rd year that you're harvesting it, the 4th and 5th year since it was planted, you can harvest off it longer. So 2 weeks the 4th year, 3 weeks the 5th year, and then after that, usually 3 to 4 week harvest is what you'll be able to get. So you can pickle it, you can freeze it, you can eat it fresh. We love to have it grilled or roasted in the oven with garlic. There's nothing better than fresh asparagus. So all I'm gonna do is just cut back this old plant matter and wait for it to come up this spring. This is just this is actually the asparagus that you would have eaten. It grows up and it gets these really funny little leaves, fern-like leaves on it. It's also important to keep the weeds out of your asparagus. I've had a hard time with that because, again, we didn't live here until a couple of years ago. And I planted it, the original planting was several years ago. So what I have done is I put some landscape fabric behind it, and then we can mow right up in front of it, and we try to keep the center part cultivated pretty well. So it's good, at least until it's established, to keep as many weeds out as possible. Okay, this is the original asparagus plant. This asparagus plant is probably 8 years old. He produces bountifully during the year, as you can see. But this is a female plant, and if you get a female plant, what you're gonna have is a whole bunch of these little red seeds. And if you take these inside and plant them, see inside of them, that one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little black seeds. You can take these inside and plant them, and they're very easy to grow. They'll grow small little asparagus plants, and you can also plant asparagus that way, but it takes, again, 3 to 4 years to get it established, maybe even longer if you do it that way. What I'm gonna do, since it's so easy to plant, is just take these seeds and sprinkle them through my row, just in case there is a crown that may have gotten winter damaged and doesn't come back. I'm gonna just spread out some of these seeds and help to propagate this asparagus. All right, this is what the summer bearing raspberries look like when they're all pruned. These are honestly a little shorter than they usually are, but I think it's because they put so much energy into making fruit last year because it was an exceptional fruit year. So that's okay. They'll still produce a decent crop this year. You can see the chocolate brown wood. And here is the fall bearing raspberries. They fruit like in early September. So these are the fall bearing ones. They're all pruned clear back, and we're gonna get rid of all of these old canes, and we're all done. Yay! Well, thanks for spending some time with me in the garden this afternoon, and I hope that you have really enjoyed it. I hope that you will plant some of these perennial plants and learn how to take care of them. They are so rewarding. Asparagus, raspberries, blueberries, and even blackberries and grapes, so much fun. So if you have any questions, please reach out. Please follow us on Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook at Wagon Wheel Homestead 21, and our blog is wagonwheelhomestead.com. We look forward to helping you grow a simple, sustainable life. Bye-bye.